with you. You know, the title could go, you could read it a couple of different ways. It could go, Running the Race Well. Or it could read, Running the Race. Well, I guess it depends on your perspective, doesn't it? I'm sure I'm not going to say anything earth-shattering today or any maybe new revelations. I don't know. Maybe it will. I don't really know, to be honest. I'm just reading from Hebrews 12, just the first two verses, actually. I think my running days are, in terms of physically running, are behind me. You know what I mean? There was a time way back, I had a friend, I had a lot of friends, but I had this one particular friend, but we would run together. And we would run from the barn down to the stop sign on Cedarville Road and back, which is a long way for me. It's a long way for short legs, let's put it that way. And getting there wasn't so bad because it's downhill most of that way. But you know what it means if it's downhill and you're going to come back the same way. It's all uphill, right? Running the race is kind of like that in the spirit and in Yahweh. It's sometimes you're going downhill and everything seems, this isn't so bad after all, but it's when you're going uphill and every step and the next step and the next step just gets more difficult. I'm sure at some point I've talked about running the race. Some of you have talked about running the race, so this isn't something new. I don't want to just run the race. I want to run it well. You know, when my prayers every day, I make certain promises to Yahweh. And one of those is and desires, the desire of my heart kind of thing. And I would like, one of the desires of my heart is to run the race well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about it today. So we're going to read Hebrews 12, first two verses. And when it begins with therefore, that's really a connector for Hebrews 11. It's all about faith, right? You're running the race. But it's all about faith. And all these people who ran the race. It was their race. They ran it. And so we get to this part of verse 12, or chapter 12, the very first verse. It says, therefore, or for this reason, we also, that's another connector to the heroes of faith we read about and those that went unnamed. We also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Yahshua, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of Yah. Praise Yahweh. Sat down at the right hand of the throne of Yah, and he's put his feet up on the heavenly footstool, kicked back, and I'm done, I finished, I ran the race. And he's not done, is he? Because it says that he's there making intercession for us. So he's still not done, okay? He's seated next to the Father. I mean, that's a good spot to be if you want his ear right. You're right next to the Father. All right, so verse 1, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance or patience the race that is set before us. So let's talk for a moment about life. Our life, your life, just life in general. but especially the life in Yahshua. The life that we live in him and for him. When you become a believer, you've entered into training. You're starting a training course that's going to last all of your life. And see, here's the thing about this race, about life. Yahweh told Abraham, walk before me and be blameless. He didn't wave his hand. He didn't whisper, and the earth shook, and the clouds, parted, and Abraham was suddenly blameless. The blameless part was on him. Walk before me and be blameless. He didn't have Yahshua. And he certainly wasn't blameless. We can read accounts where he really kind of messed up pretty big. But that wasn't the point. You see, you get to Hebrews 11 and you read about Abraham, and you don't read about any of that stuff, do you? I've talked about that before. Every one of these people that are mentioned by name in Hebrews 11 messed up really big time, some of them more than once. But you don't read about that in here. You don't see that. Because they got up from that and they pressed on and they served, and they served well. That's what matters. When you stand before Yahweh, none of that stuff is going to be mentioned. None of it's going to be there because it's all been washed away. Here's the thing about life is not a stroll. It's not a stroll on the beach or on a sunset, beautiful sunset with a red sky and all of that. Life isn't a stroll. It's not even a jog. Jogging's not too bad when you're young and you can do it. Jogging's not too bad. It's not too hard. But life isn't a jog. And life isn't a stroll. We just read, really, life is a race. Scripture calls it a race. Paul called it a race, a couple different times at least. I've finished the course, I've run my race. And it isn't random. You're not just running some course that coincidence brought together for you, that, luck, whether it was bad or good, just threw it in front of you. None of this is random. We're all aware, aren't we, that there are no coincidences in Yahweh. And when it comes to Yahweh and Yahshua and the Holy Spirit, nothing's random. Life isn't random. It's been marked out for you by Yahweh. I don't know if you remember that movie back, I don't know when it was, 80s, 90s maybe. Those of you who were there to remember it and see it. Chariots of Fire, remember that one? And what you notice when they're running their races in the track, that on the tracks and the starting points for so many feet out, it's got little poles coming up and it's got white rope marking off your lane. That's your lane. It was marked out for you. That's how they did it back then. Today, they have, whether it's chalk or whatever it is, it's lined all the way. And that's your lane to start out with. This race that we run, yours, there's this general idea that we're all running the same race. We're running to the same destination. We're running to the same goal, the kingdom, to encounter the end result of being with Yahshua forever and standing with Yahweh and worshiping him in the glory of heaven and governing and ruling nations and all of that. But how we get there, my race is different than yours. Your race is different than the other person's. It's not random. It's marked out by Yahweh. And here's the thing, and I think people kind of sometimes get hung up on this, especially your OCD people, kind of tend to think that I got to do this and I got to do it perfectly. But Yahweh hasn't called us to run the race perfectly. He's called us to run the race with endurance. Believe it or not, we're not called to do anything perfectly, because I don't know anybody that's ever done that. I read the scriptures. I read all these people and all these prophets and all these people of Hebrews. Nobody did everything perfectly. We're not called to run it perfectly. We're called to run it well. We're called to run it to the best that we know how, the best that we understand that the scriptures tell us. We're called to run it with endurance. This is an endurance race, a marathon, if you will. And you know, most people who run a marathon, whether it's the Boston Marathon or the New York Marathon or the Chicago Marathon or wherever it's run, most people that enter a marathon know they're not going to win. They're not going to cross the finish line first. You know what? And many of them do it year after year. And you know what they're doing? They're not racing against the thousands of other people that are there. They're racing against their own time from last year. They're there to beat what they did before, to do better than they did last time. That should be our goal in the race. Every time is just to do better than we did before. And in the Chariots of Fire, if you remember Eric Little starting out one of those trial races, and he fell. Actually, he got shoved aside and he fell. And he got up. Everybody was already down the track, and he got back into the race, and he ran it, and he won. So you run the race with endurance. Here's the thing about endurance. Endurance isn't in your DNA. It's not something that, yeah, all my ancestors endured, so I guess it's in me to endure. It doesn't work that way. Because either I had a lot of lazy, slow ancestors, or I just didn't have anybody instructing me about this kind of stuff when I was growing up. Endurance isn't natural. It just doesn't come with, pedigree or, your ancestry or whatever. It's formed in us. And it's formed in us by the trials that we've gone through. It's formed in us by the trials we didn't think we could go through. That's how endurance is formed in us. You can see that. It's by trials, James 1. Discipline, Hebrews 12, 7 through 11. By hope, Romans 5, 3 through 5. Endurance is learned through the miles you didn't think you could finish. Think about that for a minute. I don't know if any of you saw the movie Heartbreak Ridge. It's a true story. It's about a guy who was a conscientious objector, but he wanted to serve. It's World War II. And they all made fun of him. They called him a coward. He wouldn't lift up a gun because it doesn't matter. You have to see the movie. But he got up on the ridge, and the Japanese kept throwing him off. And one time he got left up there. And he's a medic. He started to hear the cries of the wounded. So he kept going for them back. He's the only one. And he kept going back, and he kept bringing them. I think he saved 77 guys from that ridge. He won the Medal of Honor. And you think he was the first conscientious objector to win the Medal of Honor. And you know what he did? After a while, he was just getting so that he couldn't do it on his own anymore. And every time he got somebody off the ridge safely, he would say a prayer. It was the same prayer over and over again. Give me strength for one more. See, endurance isn't about how far you've got left in the race. It's about the next step in front of you. You just go. And you know what? Sometimes all you can do is put one foot in front of the other. And Yahweh's perfectly fine with that. You don't have to run this perfectly. You just got to run it with endurance. One more. Give me one more step, Yahweh. Give me one more step. Because if you're starting to hit that wall and you're starting to lose your energy and your strength, and you start thinking, I'm not going to make it because I got another 6 miles to go. But if you just think, I got one more step to go, and then one more step to go, that's endurance. Second part of this, he says, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. That's another way of saying entangles. See, here's the thing about weights. You may be weighted down in your race. Now, weights aren't necessarily sins. You can be weighted down, and it doesn't mean it's from sin. It could be, but he's talking about two different things. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin. These are two different things he's talking about. Weights aren't always sin. They're just heavy. You know what? Since I've had this issue with my legs, going up the stairs, I do go up the stairs. I don't use the stair chair or whatever. I use it to carry the groceries upstairs. I put them on there and take them up. But I walk up the stairs. But I notice when I'm carrying something, some bags or anything with some weight to it, man, it's really hard. I can really feel it, and the legs feel like they weigh a ton. Because weight, while it's not always sin, they're just heavy. Weights don't break Yahweh's laws. They just break your stride. They just make it hard for you to do that one more step. And we get weighted down by cares of this world, by fears, by anxiety, by confusion or doubt or disappointment or hurt or whatever, any number of things it could be. And he says, lay aside every weight. Because weights, while they don't break Yahweh's laws, they're not, most of the time they're not sin. They just mess with your stride, slow you down, and make it more difficult to run the race. Sin, on the other hand, lay aside the sin that so easily ensnares us or entangles us. Sin is different because it does entangle. You try running if somebody's got a whip or a rope, and they're always, all along the way, they're constantly trying to throw that around your feet. Makes it hard to run, doesn't it? Or what about the four-legged sack race, right? Because you get entangled and people fall. Sin entangles. You get caught up in it, and the next thing you know, you stumble, and then you fall. And that's what sin does. And the writer here is saying, hey, lay it aside. Get rid of it. Deal with it. Do something about it so you can run this race well. Notice we're to lay it aside. We're not to manage it. We're not to organize it and put it in a little cubby hole where it doesn't bother us for a while, but eventually it's going to come back. It's going to slow us down or trip us up. We're to lay it aside. We're not to manage it. Just get rid of it. We've been talking about fourth floor at the barn. That's like no man's land. You know, you go up there, and that's where things go to disappear. And Alice and I and Kimberly, we've been talking about, because we have quite a bit of stuff up there. And I said, you know, it's been up there so long, I don't even know what's up there. Let's just get a construction dumpster with a chute and just start chucking stuff. That's my method of moving. Just chuck it. You haven't used it in 5 zillion or a zillion years. You don't need it. Just get rid of it. You know, you don't need it. Anything that's going to hinder your race, it's just not worth it. Paul said, I've run the race. I've kept the faith. I've finished the course. How did he do it? He got rid of the stuff that caused him to stumble, that caused him to slow down. I die daily, he said. You know, when he had other problems, he'd pray to Yahshua, deliver me from them. And, you know, Yahshua would just tell him, hey, my grace is sufficient for you. Just keep running. Sometimes he says that. Next, I've always loved this first part. We are surrounded by so great a cloud, and I'm having a problem with that word today, so great a cloud of witnesses. And I was thinking about that. And I've said before, you know, they're there to cheer us on, you know, and you know, they're not there to watch for us to make mistakes, or don't do it like that, you know, get in trouble. You know, they're there to cheer you on. And that's what I've always said. You've heard me say that before. But it's more than that. We are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. But what's the witness? Are they witnessing us running the race? Or are they there for us to witness? Because every one of these witnesses, they all had their race to run. And they all ran their race. And they all endured, and they all finished their race. And they finished it well. You remember the parable of the talents? One thing the master told the ones that took what he gave them and grew it, what did he say? First thing he said was what? Well done. Well done. They did it well. They didn't do it perfectly. You know, they could have done better, maybe, who knows? The fact of the matter is they did it well. And that's all. That's what Yahshua wants. That's what Yahweh wants. He just wants you to run the race well. And that's what these witnesses did. They each instead of all, because every one of them ran their race that Yahweh had marked out for them. They ran their race. They ran it well. They endured. You read some of the things that they did. Some women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, sawn in two. I think that was Jeremiah, maybe. One of the big guys. They were tempted. Oh no, they're not perfect. They were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins, goat skins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts, mountains, dens, and caves of the earth. And they all obtained a good testimony through their faith. Why? Because they endured. But they did not receive the promise, because they couldn't be made perfect without us. So, we have to run our race, and we have to run it well. See, they ran their race, they endured, and they finished. But you know what? Their stories aren't meant to impress us. You know, we read these accounts and we think, man, that was really amazing. I could never do something like that. You know what? You know, I've never done something like that. You know why I've never done something like that? Because I say, I could never do something like that. And you say it, and that's what ends up happening. Their stories aren't meant to impress us. They're meant to inspire us. Because every one of these people were flawed people. Were broken people. Just like you and just like me. Every one of them. Their stories are meant to inspire us. They're a testimony to us that it can be done. That we can do it. We can run this race well. I can run the race laid out before me. Who knew when I was born all the things that I would go through in my life? You know? Who knew that a 7-year-old boy would lose his mother? You know, who knew that a 53-year-old woman would be adopted by her 65-year-old parents, you know? It's a race that he was set out before us, and we're running it. We're not done running it yet. It's still a long way to go, and we're going to run it. With you, we're going to run it well. They testify that it can be done. And here's the thing. This is the witness. It's not them watching us. It's us looking at them. If they can do it, if David could do it, an adulterer and murderer. Don't say that about David, the sweet psalmist of Israel, the most beloved king ever in Israel. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he was an adulterer and a murderer. And yet, he got back up. He got back in the race, and he finished it, and he ran it well. If they can run the race, so can you. And so can I. All right, lastly, it says, looking unto Yahshua, the author and finisher of our faith. But if you look that word looking up, it is from a Hebrew expression. It actually means to fix your gaze. You ever fix your gaze on something? You know, you can be talking to somebody and they're just, you think they spaced out on you, but they're just staring. They're focused. Whatever it is they're focused on, they probably don't even hear what you're saying. You ever had that happen to you? I've had that happen to me. I've been the guy doing the staring. I'm like, wow, that's the prettiest squirrel I've ever seen, you know. It's just one of those things where you fix your eyes on something, and even though you've got peripheral vision, you don't really notice much because they're fixed. This is the thing about this. Fix your eyes on Yahshua. Just, that's the target. You run into him. You run into your big brother, and he's waiting with open arms to take you to Daddy, who's waiting with open arms. There's a lot of hugging in heaven. I hope you guys know that. I hope you're prepared for that, those of you who aren't huggers. I don't know, some of you are. Some of you aren't. But you're going to be. Fixing your eyes on Yahshua. And here's the reason why. Because he's the starting line. He's the starting point. I wouldn't even be in that lineup if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't even be in the race if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have a chance, how can I say that? A chance in a million of even finishing the race if it wasn't for Yahshua. He's the starting line. He's the author. He's writing it. Do you know why your story is the second greatest story ever told? Because he's the author. He doesn't write anything that fizzles. He is the author. He's the starting line. You know what? He's the finish line. He's the finish line. And you know, when you're partway through that race and you start struggling, you stumble and fall, and you don't think you can get back up, and it seems like forever before you do, he's got no doubt. He doesn't say, well, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that guy was going to do that. He's there at the finish line waiting. And when you cross it, he's like, I knew you could do it. A lot of the times, they know we can do things. They know what we can do. It's just getting us to believe that we can do it. He authored your faith. And he's going to finish your faith. He that began a good work in you will perfect it, will complete it at the coming of Yahshua. So Paul said. He began a good work in you. Do you believe that? That Yahshua began a good work in you? Yeah. He did. And if he began a good work in you, he's going to finish it, because that's what they do. Yahweh said, I'll never desert you or leave you behind. He authored your faith. He's going to finish your faith. You know what that tells me? That you never run alone. You never run alone. It's like an exercise regimen. You know why so many people fail in their New Year's resolutions about getting into shape? Because they and they're sincere. The problem is, much of the time, they're doing it alone. While everyone has their race to run, we're all in it together. We're running together. I saw a Special Olympics thing, and these, I call them kids because they're like innocent kids, but they're running. And they're running for all they're worth. I saw this one. And one of them fell. And rather than run to the finish line and coming back, they all stopped where they were. And they went back. And they picked him up and hugged him. And then they all crossed the finish line arm in arm. That's what this race is like. He ran the race with purpose and with joy. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Do you know why Yahshua could endure the cross? Well, of course, he's the Messiah. He's the Son of Yahweh. Well, yeah, there's that. There's another big reason why he could endure the cross. It was because there was a joy that was set before him. If I do this, all of these people, millions and millions of people, are going to have eternal life and encounter Yahweh and spend eternity with him. You're the reason. I'm the reason he could face the cross. And that was the joy. You are the joy. He ran the race with purpose. Purpose was, he told Pilate, when Pilate said, don't you hear what they're accusing you of? Don't you know I have the power to crucify you? He said, you have no power other than what's given to you from above. For this purpose I came. For this purpose I was born into this world. He ran the race with purpose and with joy. He ran it all the way to the cross. He ran his race all the way to the grave. He ran it all the way to the resurrection. And I think he's still running it with us. I am with you. I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. If he's with me always and with you always, he's running right alongside of you. You don't win by finishing first. You win by finishing well. Hallelujah.